and welcome to the Help Is Here podcast, brought to you by the Beyond Compulsion Academy. Today we're going to be talking about the elephant in the room when it comes to pornography, addiction recovery. So I want to start off by sharing a bit of a story. So this is all true, by the way. We had a guy message me this week and he was like, how do I know your anecdotal stories are true? And I was like, well, it's up to you whether you believe me or not, but like it'd be insane to just make this shit up. It'd be so weird. Yeah. Anyway, when I was younger, I actually wrote down like 5 things to talk about here because when I was younger, I did go through some shit growing up. I think we all do. I don't really think my childhood was particularly bad. I think if anything, I was quite lucky that I did have a good childhood. And I've heard stories from people of childhoods that have been absolutely horrific. When I did volunteering work at the Samaritans, I heard some really, really awful stuff. And like, just people growing up with the worst circumstances around them you could imagine. So I'm very, very lucky for the childhood that I did have. However, there were a few things which I've got to admit I found challenging. And then in the years between sort of like 12 and maybe 25, so quite a long time in my life, I would kind of search for explanations as to why I would watch porn and why I had a problem with porn. And I'd like point at these different things from my childhood. And I suppose that analysis was more between like 18 and 25. So it's probably more when I got older that I started to like analyze this stuff, because some of this stuff even actually happened in my like teenage years. So anyway, here's a few things that like went on in my childhood that at one point I genuinely believed was the cause of my porn addiction. So circumcision, that's the first one I've wrote down, because I was like one of the only kids in my school to be circumcised. And I really felt like I was an outsider. And I felt some shame around that. And I didn't really understand it, especially like under the age of 10. And then I remember like at one point thinking that I watched porn because a lot of the men in porn were circumcised, and wanted to like relate to them in some way. That was like a belief when I was in the porn addiction. Like obviously the first few years of watching porn, I wasn't like aware of that. That wasn't a thought at all. It was more when I got into trying to delve into the trauma side of things that belief started to occur. Another one was football. I fell out with some guys when I was like 14 who were in my football team. And then I started to believe that if I played badly at football, then I could be susceptible to relapsing, because I had a fallout at the age of 14 with some guys I played football with. And that belief like was prevalent in my life up until meeting you really at like age 25. Another thing was my mum having cancer. So that was when I was age 12. She was diagnosed with cancer. It came back and she got diagnosed with secondary cancer. So that's been something that's just been ever present for me in my life since the age of 12. So I believed at one point that there'd be certain abandonment issues and that could lead me to watching porn if I was rejected by a woman later on in life, like dating and things like that. Another one was my older sister bullying me when I was very, very young. So that's like maybe between the ages of like 4 and 10. At one point, she like broke my arm by mistake. And again, I used to believe that could be related to my femdom addiction in some way. And then also in my years between maybe like 7 and 11 at junior school, I had some friends leave the school due to their parents like leaving for different jobs. And again, some kind of abandonment issues. Now, between those years, I guess between like 18 and 25, I kind of look to these circumstances from when I was really, really young and go, oh, that's why I'm addicted to porn. It's because of this thing here. And then I believe that certain things in my adult life could trigger the same feelings that would come up when I was really, really young and then lead to me relapsing, basically. That's what I believed. And if I'm honest now, like a few years later, having used the Beyond Compulsion method for quite a long time, these like 5 things I've just listed, like they never really enter my mind anymore, which is really cool. And it's just like so different to like look back on all of this stuff and kind of feel a bit more comfortable opening up and sharing it from a place of stability and calmness, knowing that this stuff doesn't really have that much to do with the porn addiction. I mean, potentially some of these things could have led to me watching porn at like age 12, but then in terms of actually wiring my brain and staying stuck in the addiction, these things are not what led to me staying in that addiction. And the evidence of that is that I haven't really even worked on these things that much in my life. but I have managed to stop watching porn successfully and feel totally in control of myself simply by moment dealing with compulsive desires. There's a lot there. Mary, do you want to jump in here and kind of share your perspective on everything I've just sort of unloaded on our unfortunate audience?
Yeah. Unfortunate on it. Well, the thing is, I feel like when you were 10 or whatever, when you started looking up porn, you were 10. Is that right? Ish, 10,
No,
11 ish.
I was 12. I was 12.
Well, old. You're old man by that point, right? Still a kid, right? So the thing is like you get derailed, your sexuality gets derailed, right? And then you already have the addiction going on. So now you have all these other things, you're looking at for reasons like, you say, you feel confused, what's going on with me? It's really stressful, you know, coming into puberty and then getting addicted to porn, all of it and all the negative consequences is really, it's a problematic situation. So then you look for stuff like circumcision. It was a problem at football. Was your mom getting sick? Sister bullying you? All the things. So, but now, I mean, there you're trying to sort shit out, right? Like, what is going on? Why is this happening to me? Why can't I stop doing this? And rather than looking at the addicted neural pathways, that's the unfortunate situation, right? You get these addicted neural pathways, and here you're stuck in it. So now that you've been able to actually deal with those addicted neural pathways, you can look at all of these things objectively, and maybe, these difficult things in your life because you already had, a porn addiction established in your neural pathways, these things could trigger it. You know what I mean? And they don't even necessarily have to trigger it as you use them as a reason because you want to do it, because you're wired that way. But, I've told the guys over and over, is it's one of the benefits of actually getting free of the addiction. You can look back at some of the things that maybe were somewhat traumatizing in your life objectively rather than just kind of blindly acting on it if you or trying to use it as a reason, any reason to engage in the porn. You just can get such a much better understanding of yourself and how those things maybe have affected you, outside of the porn addiction, but kind of separating the two and seeing the understanding of these things that happen to you as a benefit. Because my opinion is that young boys, really boys, getting stuck in porn addiction, that's trauma enough, doing it over and over. And you get the confusion and the consequences and like, what is happening to me and why can't I stop doing this? And all of it, that's traumatizing in itself. So dealing with that separately, and then you can start to understand things from your childhood that maybe did form you in some ways or make you have emotions that might make you feel vulnerable. And then when you feel vulnerable, then the addictive part of the mind steps in and is like, oh, hey, go use some porn, right? But kind of being able to separate the two, I think, is where you're at now.
Yeah, yeah. I think the key word you used quite a few times there is separate. You can look at things separately. And I think that's so important because when you're in the porn addiction, it can be such like a messy place mentally. Like you're
Yeah.
so unsure on what's really going on in your own mind, and you sort of have that lack of self trust. You don't really know if you're going to get out of control and relapse again in the future.
Yeah.
And you don't
Scary.
really know what you're doing. Like it is confusing because like part of your mind, like the rational part of the mind, obviously wants to stop the behavior, but then you've got the addictive part of the mind that wants to engage in it, and then you've got this tidal wave of misinformation online and all these different random beliefs around. You got the semen retention stuff, the no-fap
Yeah.
stuff. Then you've got
Yes.
all the childhood trauma stuff, and you've got all these different therapists, and there's so much information. And so it can be quite overwhelming and confusing. And that separation is so key because what you've got to really understand is that you are going to want to engage in the behavior. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're inherently flawed. And it also doesn't mean you need to solve all of your childhood trauma to stop having that desire, because the desire is created by engaging in the behavior, which creates these neural pathways. So like
Yeah.
that's where the desire is coming from. It's coming
Yeah.
from acting on the desire repeatedly in the past, and that's what creates the desire. So if you
Yeah.
then go treat your trauma like I did for years and years and years, what will happen is you'll maybe solve one piece of the puzzle, like one bit of the trauma, then you relapse, then you tell yourself, oh, maybe it's because of this other trauma. Then you try work on that, then you
Yeah.
relapse again, then you blame a new trauma, and then you end up just going round and round and round. And you can end up being on this like indefinite journey of working on different parts, different like traumas within. And honestly, that can be like a never ending journey. Like that could literally last for your whole life, like just relapsing for your
Well, you
whole
could pay
life.
for therapy for
Yeah.
5 years, 10 years. I've got
Well,
people in
the amount of
therapy for
clients we've
years
had
and
who've
years.
gone down
And I
that
mean,
route.
really
Yeah.
seriously, like, think about this rationally. Okay, so now we've uncovered, you know, your sister broke your arm. Okay, so that's why you want to use porn. Yeah, okay. What? It just makes absolutely no sense. We've uncovered that, or the guys were not cool at football, or I don't know what you were fucking up at football and not scoring goals or whatever you were doing. So, okay, that's why he's porn. So now we figured that out. Now I'm not going to want to use porn anymore. I like, no, like you say, it's just never ending. Any kind of thing that might make you feel vulnerable might may trigger, we know how like the addictive part of the mind works. Or even when the guys have been like free of porn for months or whatever, and they get sick, they're sick in bed for days, got the flu or whatever. Here comes the addictive part of the mind, it's like any vulnerable state that you're in, you can learn how to deal with that and expect it. Any emotional, kind of like association to things from the past. But really, though, when you're in the addiction, none of that stuff comes clear. It's like you can use it as a reason or look at it as, oh, this might be why I'm doing this or whatever, but you don't really get the clarity around it because the addiction takes up so much mental space. It really is its own beast. And these things are, again, they might make you feel vulnerable with that old emotions or whatever, but they certainly are not going to resolve a porn addiction just by identifying things in your childhood or whatever that might have been challenging for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think the idea is that if you solve something from your childhood and you deal with that trauma, that's going to take the desire away. And I
Yeah.
think that's the problem, is that like most internet information is really just focused on you trying to get rid of that desire, right? But like it's kind of getting into the desire, which is the starting place to actually change the neural pathways. So that's the other thing of like looking at all the trauma, is like it's just the wrong focus. It's just getting you away from the thing that actually matters, which is acknowledging that you do have these desires. They're temporary, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you for having the desires. And you can change your neural pathways and think through that desire in a rational way. And the desire is nothing to be scared of either.
Yeah. Always looking for the why. Why do I want to do this? Why do I want to do this? Why do I want to do this? And you can just spin out in circles endlessly. You go online looking for, we should do it sometime. Ask Chat GBT. Why do people want to use pornography? Wow, that could be a rabbit hole, huh? Well, you want to use it because you're wired that way. So all the whys are just a bunch of, you know, barking up the wrong tree when the real question is, how am I going to stop doing this? And then the rest of that stuff comes clear. It'll come clear once your mind isn't completely bombarded with, junky thoughts and unanswerable questions and regarding the addiction, and the dilemma, wanting to stop. All that takes up so much space in your brain. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it can be quite relieving as well to like realize for yourself that you don't need to search for a reason why you have the desires. Because I think in the moment of compulsive desire, it can be quite alluring to then start questioning, why am I having this desire? Is it because I had a lack of sleep? Is it because I did this behavior yesterday? Is it because of that? And you just end up down a rabbit hole of unanswerable questions. And the only thing to really consider in that moment of compulsive desire is obviously the one and only relevant question: what am I choosing to do and why? And you answer that. We would do that with the scripts, think it through in a rational way and make a decision, make a choice, and then you move on from there. But again, it's just getting back into the present moment and acknowledging that in the present moment, you do have these options available to you. But if you're so stuck in the past or you're in the future, you're just obliterating your actual control and power of choice in the right now, in the present moment, which is where the actual changes in the neural pathways even takes
Yeah.
place.
And I mean, really, if you think about it, almost all therapies in the past, digging up what happened in the past traumas, and it really is not, I mean, I don't know. There's some benefits to therapy, I guess, I just don't see them when it comes to people that are stuck in addictions, which is like a lot of people now, with porn and food. And I mean, it's like, it's so epidemic that people that are, not well and mentally unwell and go seek therapy, most of them have addictions, that really pretty much are going to get in the way of any kind of, uncovering of the traumatic incidences from childhood or whatever, in my opinion. So, but probably a lot of people would tell me to shut up. I'm not a doctor or whatever. Stop dispensing. I'm not dispensing any medical information. It's just what I've seen, and understanding the addictive part of the mind, how it works, always
Yeah.
looking for a
Yeah. Yeah.
reason. And a lot of that too is like, you start to uncover those traumas. I had this trauma. This is just who I am. This happened to me. So now this is a reason for me to engage in these behaviors, right? It kind of feeds a helpless state of mind as well, So, yeah.
But yeah, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Cool. I think we'll wrap it up here then. I mean, the
Sure.
thing to just get across overall is that the elephant in the room is that it's the porn use which creates the desire to engage in more porn use. It's quite simple, but it's so misunderstood and people can go down the wrong direction for years and years and years. And we've seen that happen with so many clients that we work with that
So
have been in
many.
therapy for
Yeah.
honestly like decades. So
Yeah.
hopefully this message can help someone out there who has maybe gone down the wrong path so far.
Yeah, for sure. Good stuff.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
If you'd like to learn whether you do have a problem with porn at the moment yourself, feel free to take the compulsion test. We'll leave a link below so you can get a score out of 100. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.